So Susan Milner from Cape Coral in Florida, in America. I've been wanting to talk to you for so long about the differences in real estate between Australia and America. And we're finally here. Thank you for talking with me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I know that, we've had a few conversations, but like to really delve into some of the differences. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah. I actually really want to go around the world and, sort of see the differences, because you can learn from, other countries, other businesses, other business models and all that sort of thing. So it's just interesting. So I want to kind of talk about what it was like there prior to coronavirus, during, and what you think it's going to be after. So we'll go into that as well. But first of all, probably some of the terminology that you guys use that's different to us. So explain what a broker is.
Okay. So in the United States, if you want to work in real estate, you get your real estate salesperson's license, and you get that through your individual state. And there's different rules and amount of school and stuff in each state. But for instance, in the state of Florida, we have to do a 63-hour pre-licensing course, and then you can become a real estate salesperson. Now with that license, you can go and you basically, what they say, hang it with a real estate broker. So I'm currently a real estate broker. I opened Florida Future Realty in early 2008. And before that, I was a salesperson since 2004. And you have to be underneath a broker for at least 2 years before you can go off on your own and be a broker.
Right, okay. So how many agents do you have working with you?
So right now we're kind of working a little bit like a team. I have
different
10 agents.
Coronavirus as well, but yeah.
Oh.
Currently during this storm, yeah.
Well, so yeah, nothing's changed as far as how many agents I have. I would say that we did have one transaction fell apart, but I didn't lose an agent or anything like that. So still have the same amount of agents, about 10.
Right, okay, awesome. All right, now another term that you guys use is a closing. So what's a closing?
Okay, so once everything, you have a agreed upon offer, a contract, and then you go through the whole escrow period, inspections, all of that. When everything's said and done, the finance is all in place, then they have what's called a closing. And on that date, the buyer and seller sign all of their closing documents, and they exchange the property exchanges, property ownership, and then the deal is closed. That's the closing. That's when it's actually done.
Okay, that's
what do you guys say when it's completed?
Settlement.
Okay.
Yep.
We have a settlement statement.
Okay. All right. All right. So in escrow, you mentioned that. So explain in escrow what that means.
Okay. So in escrow would be the time period that there is an accepted offer and the buyer has placed their money, their escrow deposit into, here we use title companies in the state of Florida. There's other states that use attorneys, but here it would be placed at a title company, and then that's considered in escrow through that period until closing.
Okay. So is that when it's unconditional? Is that when it's like, it's going ahead?
No, in escrow just means that there has been a transfer of consideration with the contract, so it's a valid contract. We still would have contingencies like the inspection period, the finance period. Those are usually our two main ones.
All right. Do you complete the contract yourself, did you say, sorry, or is that something a lawyer does?
We do. So we have basically contract forms that between our association of realtors and the bar association, so the attorneys, have put together, and it's basically a fill in the blank form. So hopefully, as the agents don't mess it up, it's literally just fill in the blanks.
Okay, awesome. All right. Now, do you like, we call our sellers vendors? Do you call them vendors?
We call our sellers. Sometimes you'll say like the homeowner because they currently, own the home, but for the most part, sellers are just sellers.
Okay, all right. Now, what about Zillow? What do you think about the portals over there, and what do real estate agents think about the portals over there? Is Zillow the main one where you are?
We have Zillow, and then we also have Realtor.com, and a couple smaller ones, but Zillow, Trulia are kind of the biggest ones, and you're going to have mixed reviews. So depending on just the agent's business model, whether they love it or hate it. I have colleagues of mine who spend thousands of dollars advertising on it, so they love it. They make a lot of money with it. And then I have some that wish they could just boycott them altogether and not have to deal with them. They think they're taking business away from us, real estate agents.
Yes. So does everybody use it though, basically?
No.
No,
There are a lot of brokerages that don't put their listings on the portal, and our consumers use it a lot. I feel like as an individual agent, you can't really compete with your website compared to the tools that Zillow is offering. So a lot of times the consumer will look at it and then forward the listing to their agent for more information. But as far as agents, it's hit or miss. Probably over half of the agents are using it, but it's not our main thing. Like, our main thing is our local MLSs that then syndicate that information out to the portals.
Right, okay. So your own website, or it's like a local MLS website?
So it's a local MLS, and they don't really have like a forward-facing consumer site. I mean, they do, but it's not really used. So it's just the data, the data that we would log in and see as agents, then they feed that out to the large portals.
Okay, awesome. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the licensing, like the Board of Realtors, MLS, and NAR. Is that the licensing board, NAR?
It's a membership site, so that's where it gets a little complicated, especially for new agents, and I'm assuming you, because you haven't experienced this in the United States, but so licensing is done at a state level, and you take the course and then you get your real estate license, and you can just stay a real estate agent, and you don't have to become a realtor. If you want to become a realtor, then you join a local association, the state association, and the National Association of Realtors, and then you get to have that membership.
And you have to do that. That's compulsory.
You don't, no.
You
do not have to join the board, but most of the real estate agents do end up becoming realtors, and that's why the membership is so large.
Right, wow. I mean, in America, I think there's 2 million real estate agents or something. Like, we have less than 100,000, I think, in Australia, and you've got 2 million real estate agents in America?
Yeah, like, that's crazy to hear you only have like 100,000. No, like, there are so many realtors in this country. Where I am, Cape Coral, Florida, just to give you an idea, probably within a 30 to 40 mile radius, there's over 20,000 licensed real estate agents and brokers.
How many actually are fully practicing though? Like, I mean, it seems to me like, I see, the Insta model real estate agents, and it's like they've got part-time jobs and all that sort of thing. So is that something that's really common? Like, people might list one house a year. They say they're a realtor, but they're really doing other things and whatever. Is that common?
Yes, unfortunately it is. So especially here in Florida, we're, a very large retirement state. So a lot of times people move here, they retire, and then they say, I'm going to get my real estate license. So they get a real
estate agent.
Just for fun, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say that, it's about the 80-20 rule. You hear that in a lot of sales and things, that, 20% of the agents are doing 80% of the business. And you have some that hold their license and literally do not close a transaction in a year. And then there's some that close anywhere between 1 and 5, which we would really not consider in the business per se. But yeah, there are a lot of real estate agents that really aren't doing much.
Wow. Okay. So prior to coronavirus, currently with coronavirus and how you see it going, what's the market been like in your area? What's happening now? Like, has everything just stopped? Are agents still going ahead and doing transactions, or is everybody just locked down? And then how do you see it when we come out of this?
Okay. Well, I'm going to get my crystal ball. No, just kidding. So we all wish we knew, like, it would be a really good opportunity to know. No, so what happened here is obviously the President of the United States, Donald Trump, had kind of allowed the individual state governors to decide if they were locking completely down or if they were going to allow essential businesses to still take place. And our governor, Ron DeSantis, has said that real estate will remain essential, even though that we have pretty much everything locked down now. However, we're still supposed to follow like the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, guidelines, which says like stay 6 feet away from everybody and sanitize everything. And, now it's now been recommended to wear masks. So what my agents, I recommended a couple weeks ago, no more open houses. Like, we don't need a bunch of people coming through, all at once. And we started implementing like virtual tours with even just their cell phones, just to walk through a house, show it that way, to, just not have as many people through a home. And that seems to have, been helping. I mean, we already did stuff like that, but it's kind of like, well, now let's really put those things into play. And as far as like activity, it's been a little slow, but when I actually look at the statistics, it's not hugely different. There are still every day new listings coming on the market, listings going under contract pending sale.
Oh, well, you have the whole MLS, don't you? So you can see what's happening countrywide.
Yeah, so I guess you don't use that in Australia. So in the United States, we use the MLS, and so like we know what's going on like within 24 hours. Like, actually our rules are we have to change the status within 24 hours. So you can see what's going on with anyone's listings. Is it, active? Did it come back on the market? Did it, expire? What had happened? So we have like this behind the scenes, like stalker view of all of our competition.
You get a real bird's eye view of exactly what's happening with everybody, don't you?
Yeah.
So you don't think it's slowed down at all during this? Like, still listings coming on, still sales?
It feels slower, like personally, but I'm looking at the numbers, and overall it really hasn't changed that much, because we're in a transient area. People are always coming, people are always going. So I feel like somebody's always looking to do something in real estate. Prices, definitely I haven't seen any change, but ask me in 3-4 months, depending on how long this crisis is going on, we might see something in hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, your area, I think I'm on the Gold Coast here in Queensland, and I think your area is quite similar to mine. Beachy location. Yeah, you get a lot of people moving into the area that want the beach and all that sort of thing. So I mean, your market is probably going to bounce back quite quickly, you think, from this? Who knows?
I would think so. When we had the big, boom and crash of 2008 through like 11, we were kind of one of the first areas to rebound from that. You would see that, other places in the United States were still in their down. We were coming back out of it, just because of the level of activity here. I mean, it's just, everyone wants to be in South Florida, so.
It's beautiful. And so how is everybody adapting to working from home? Your brokers, or your agents, sorry, how are they adapting working from home? So you mentioned the virtual tours and all that sort of thing. How are they adapting? Are they, is it kind of things that they've put in place that will continue post, coronavirus?
Well, most of my agents had already been working from home. Like, most brokerages in the United States have kind of shifted more outside of the brick and mortar offices. We do still have those. I still have a beautiful office my agents can use, but I find that I didn't see them very often before this anyways. Like, they would show up to meet with a customer, drop off check, pick up money, those kind of things, just, maybe equipment and stuff, but they're used to working out of their home. So that I don't really think has affected them so much. I think that the idea that they can't go out to dinner and, do all these kind of things they used to do are affecting them.
That's the thing that affects you more, isn't it? Yeah. The things that we used to take for granted. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we would normally, you go show properties to a buyer, let's say, and then you go take them to lunch on the water, you know, beautiful restaurant. And now it's like, we can't go anywhere. You know, we could go back to the office, I guess, but the
Different.
restaurant would be more fun.
Exactly. So the demographics in your area, is it, and the average selling price and all that sort of thing? Like what is it in your area?
So in our county here, I'm in Lee County in Florida, and our average price point's about 275 for a house. Now, you know, we do have the higher end market that, you know, 500,000 up into the millions, but if you look at the whole average, you're at about $275,000.
Okay. So, and agents in America, just like, so you've got the selling agent, so the person that lists the property for sale. Then you've got, and the seller pays you. Then you've also got, does everybody employ a buyer's agent? Like, do people that are looking to buy a property, because that seems to be, you know, sort of, it seems like everybody does that over there. Do they? I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess it's a little different here. So basically, most real estate agents both work with sellers and buyers. And in Florida, we can actually work with both on the same transaction. We can be a transaction broker. Some states you're not allowed to do that. Like, you either have to choose whether you're working for the seller or the buyer. And it's just different agency rules. So here you would go and, like, let's just say I took a listing, you know, at X amount of price for X amount of commission. What I would normally do then is offer half of that commission out to a potential buyer's agent that's going to bring the offer to the property that'll end up in closing or settlement. And most, I would say like half and half. Some consumers still call the listing agent directly, but we recommend that you call to get your own agent, like a buyer's agent, to work for you. And then, of course, since we have the MLS, they can search for all the homes that are available and make sure they find you the right one. And then, as the customer doesn't pay anything to the buyer's agent. So then at the end of closing, basically the seller is the one paying both the agents, you know, based upon that listing agreement with the listing agent.
Okay. And what is it for a selling agent and a buying agent? What's normally the commission?
Commissions are varying through the United States, and actually, like, we're not supposed to discuss them publicly because of the Federal Trade Commission.
Cool.
So individual brokerages can set like minimums. Like my firm, I set a 6% minimum, but I can't discuss what firm down the road is doing or anything like that. Like, we can set our own, and then other firms can set their own. If you list, like, for instance, on a higher percentage, 7-8% or something like that, you can sell that property a lot quicker because the agents on the other side of it are making more money to go, you know, sell that house.
Right, okay. All right. The incentives, yeah. So you're in my group, Let's Talk About Real Estate, on Facebook. So what have you seen? Is there anything that's been really obvious to you about the differences between real estate in America and Australia based on that group? Like some of the questions that we discuss or whatever. Is there anything that really kind of surprises you, or you know?
You know, not really. I mean, it's interesting that I don't feel like there's the same regulations, maybe, some of the comments and stuff, but some of the things, and I've just picked up on, are like, you know, like we talked about in the beginning, some of the different terminology that's used. And, you know, but I feel like overall the general, you know, way seems to be similar. I do think, and maybe it's because I'm not in the giant, you know, city though, but I do think that maybe you guys have a little bit better marketing, or maybe you're just sharing the really awesome marketing videos, because I love some of those videos. They're so creative and just like well done.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen. I think we're probably a lot more into the personal branding, are we, than you guys? Like, you know, there's kind of individual real estate agents underneath the broker are a lot more focused on individual branding, I think, here than what I've noticed over there. Is that what you mean?
Now we do individual agents and most brokerages, like in my firm, we encourage the agents to go and, you know, brand themselves and make their name known. But there's also a lot of regulations on that. And as far as advertising rules, like you have to make sure, for instance, that the brokerage name is larger than your name or your team name or, you know, whatever you're going with, because they want to make sure that the consumer knows that they're dealing with a real estate brokerage. So sometimes it's a little more difficult and challenging for an individual agent to be like, you know, they can't pretend like they're their own shop, for instance.
Right. Okay. So they can do videos of self-promotion, but they just have to make sure they mention the broker name and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they're, you know, I encourage it. I even encourage all my agents to use their own personal cell phone for all their marketing. We don't want all the calls coming into the brokerage. Like they're very independent. I mean, they're independent contractors running their own business inside the brokerage. So we definitely encourage that. They just have to have the correct advertising, you know, procedures on all their marketing.
Okay. And just a question from really left field, and I was just, because I'm, you know, I go into some of the American Facebook pages, and it blows my mind when I go into this sometimes, and there's women talking about packing, you know, like, oh, you know, I've got this gun that I take, and I've got this gun, and I'm like, oh my God, like, do you have guns where you are?
Yeah, so Florida's a big gun state. Like, you know, people have like concealed permit. They, you know, you can carry your gun with you concealed if you have the concealed permit. I personally have one, so you can. Is it necessary? Is it super scary? No, but you hear these one-off kind of things where, you know, something happens and, you know, it's better safe than sorry.
Yeah. But it's just so funny. That's the conversation. It's like, you know, like, what do you wear when you're packing? You know, like, what handbag do you have? It's like, because we don't really have them here. So, you know, licensed people do, but yeah, we don't kind of carry them around every day. So yeah, that's just something that I noticed is quite different. Anyway, what is a short sale? That's something I always see a fair bit as well. So that's something that doesn't seem as common now, but what is a short sale?
Okay, so a short sale, we did a lot of those several years back. And basically, so most buyers, when they purchase a property, they borrowed the money from the bank, so they had a mortgage. And are those still the same terminologies that you use?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. And so then when the market crashed and tanked and someone's in a situation where they need to sell their home, they could no longer afford it, then they would hire us to sell their house, and then we would negotiate with their bank to take less than what they owed on their mortgage in order to make the deal happen. And depending on individual circumstances, sometimes the banks were willing to forgive that whole amount that they weren't getting. And other times, like I had a couple investor customers of mine that, you know, they weren't hurting as bad as maybe other people were. So the bank said, look, we'll do a short sale, but you're going to sign a promissory note for part of it, or you're going to owe us something down the road. But most of them were fully forgiven from that debt. So that's kind of, you know, when everything crashed here.
So what would they do? So if that was somebody they got in that situation, they would come to you, and then what? Do they just walk away from the property, or?
Yeah, so we would list the property, and then once we had a contract for sale and purchase, usually individual banks would have like guidelines of what documents they were requiring. It was basically like undoing the mortgage. So they would ask for, you know, bank statements and payroll statements and a hardship letter, and they want to know everything about this person. Like, really, truly, do they have a hardship where they cannot no longer afford this house? And then I would send all those documents to the negotiator at the bank, and then the bank would determine, yep, we'll do it, or they might have countered it some terms, or they would say no. But I happen to become really good at it. I like to, I guess, bang my head against the wall and, you know, like really struggle sometimes. And I did things, so I did hundreds of them for, you know, in those few year period when we were in that like crashed market.
Wow. And who pays you for that?
So the commissions were paid from the banks. The seller, in almost all my cases, didn't have to come to closing with anything. Like the closing costs, the commissions, and everything were, you know, paid on part of that deal from the banks.
And so foreclosures and mortgagee sales, how is that?
So in Florida, there's been times where we've had it go very quickly, and there's been times where legislation has slowed it down because there were, like too many people getting foreclosed on when we were going through this. But so the bank would file a lis pendens, which is just a document to the court that says, hey, you're so far behind, and they could file that technically after one missed payment, but most of the time it was after 2 or 3 missed payments. Sometimes I wouldn't see it till 6 missed payments or whatever. Individual banks did it all differently. And then from there, it goes to the court system. And, if they don't come to some resolve, or, some of the owners were fighting it with their attorneys and things, like for whatever reason, what was going on. But then it would go and they would get a auction sale date. And normally what would happen is that the bank then would get a credit for the amount of their loan on the sale. And so then anybody that bid higher than that could potentially then own the property. But most of them went back to the lenders because everybody was so upside down through most of that crisis period. And then the lender then would list the property for sale, and it would either be called a foreclosure or REO, which is a real estate owned, or corporate. They would sometimes call it corporate, and then go back on the market for sale.
Okay. And so it didn't sound like the banks are very forgiving. Is it like, one missed payment, okay, we want to take the house kind of thing? Was it, no wonder you had so many? Is that the way they were? Are they still like that?
Yeah, I mean, you really, if you miss, a payment or two, it's kind of like you should know. I had a handful of ones that, people called me where I looked and they hadn't paid in a couple of years, which was kind of out of the ordinary. But like they would maybe file something disputing it, their attorney would do some stuff, and so it just slowed the process down. But the ones that didn't respond or, weren't proactive in the process about it, it could happen quickly within, 3 to 6 months.
So how many foreclosures would you have, or mortgagee sales would you have, like in your area? Are there a lot?
Oh, it was really bad in those years. Probably 70 or 80% of all of our transactions were distressed at that time period for several years.
And what about now?
Now, probably less than 3% are foreclosures or short sales. Like we're in just a regular, increasing market right now.
I mean, here the banks are pretty good. They will really try and negotiate with the homeowner. Whether it's like, adding it on to the end of the loan, or, they are quite forgiving here, because I think too, they don't want to be seen as as the bad guy either. So they are quite forgiving here. If it's a company, sometimes they will, well, if they're not making the payments, they will liquidate the company and then have to liquidate the assets. So if it's a private house, then they may liquidate, they could go into bankruptcy, all that sort of thing. Private owners, like just your everyday mums and dads, it would be the bank would try and negotiate. If they can't, then eventually it would end up in a mortgagee in possession. And then the seller would get anything left over from the loan,
Right.
less all the costs, of auctioning, of doing up the property to get it, looking right and all that sort of thing. If it's less than that, if the bank is going to get less than that, then what's owing? Generally, sometimes we have what's called mortgage insurance. And so then the banks will claim on the mortgage insurance, and then the mortgage insurer will try and get the money out of the home seller, which then they could go bankrupt or whatever. So they're not as common now, thank goodness, and hopefully, coming into this coronavirus thing, it's not going to be. But the government's trying to get banks to add it on to the end of the loans and all that sort of thing, to kind of be flexible. So it's interesting times, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was going to just add on to what you were saying. So, since we had started talking about short sales and then foreclosures, my mind was so wrapped around people owing more on their house than what it was worth. And same thing here, though. If there was equity in the home, like after all the cost and everything, the owner would get that back. So it sounds very similar. We have mortgage insurance as well in a lot of these cases.
Yes, perfect. All right. Okay, that's wonderful. It's always like, you just kind of think that the different terminologies you hear, and it's always good to see what other people are doing, and yeah, in real estate. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been amazing. How long have we known each other on Facebook?
I don't even know, at least a few years, right? I mean, probably several.
It would be. Isn't it amazing, the power of social media?
I love it. And you know what? One of the cool things that I think that if anything good comes out of this coronavirus is just reminding people of the ability to connect with each other through technology. I mean, we're how far away from each other, and like in an instant we can be on a video chat.
Exactly. Isn't it amazing? We had a good chat the other day as well. I know I've never had so many video chats. Friends are ringing and go, let's do a video chat. And then I've got 5 friends and we're all having a catch up. So it's been really good, hasn't it? Yeah.
No,
I've actually liked it. I've liked the isolation. Yeah. I don't know. I think it feels really grounding. It just feels really getting back to the basics again, and building back up again. Yeah, I've really liked it, actually.
yeah, I think that, a lot of people, a lot of the consumer calls I'm getting right now are people that have had a lot of time to think, and they're like, they want to make a change. Like they've reevaluated priorities and they're like, I want to downsize, or I want to live where I really want to live. It's given a lot of people introspective time.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot more sales coming onto the market. Yeah, a lot more properties.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think too, like as soon as like we get word like, hey, we've totally like stopped this virus back to normal, I think there's gonna be a lot of pin-up people too, like that maybe they didn't do something because they weren't sure, and now they're like, now I want to go do what I want to do.
Absolutely, I think so too. Yeah, be interesting. That's what we think in our crystal ball. Yeah.
Exactly right. Now, are you guys still working, or is it similar to what I
Yeah.
described? Or
Auctions have been banned, like public auctions. They've been banned. Open houses have been banned. You still can do private inspection, but you have to do, it changes every day basically, but you have to have so many people and so far apart and all that sort of thing. So, you've got to be careful of the numbers of the people that you've got with you and all that sort of thing, and the distancing and all of that sort of stuff, social distancing. So it's, agents are wearing masks and gloves and things like that. So, it's probably the same there. We've got probably half the agents that have isolated and have just shut up shop for a little while to kind of regroup and sort of get through this period. And then you've got the others, it's business as usual. So, which I think it's good. I think you've still got to be getting out in front of everybody, and you've still got to be marketing yourself, because I think otherwise if you're doing the first option, I think you're really going to be behind the 8 ball when everything's back to normal again. So, what you do now is what you get in 3 months' time a lot of the time. So if they're not doing anything now, I think they're going to really struggle now and in 3 months' time. And you've still got to be sowing the seed in real estate, don't you? It's sort of, you've got to be talking to the people, and then they take a little while to come onto the market, or to kind of make a decision. So I'm just really encouraging people to even if you're still at home, still do your marketing. Still talk to people. Don't just stop altogether. The world hasn't stopped, and the world's not going to end.
right.
And we need to keep going. Yeah.
I agree. Like I've been trying to, tell the agents like share posts and videos about the area, or, whatever is happening, and even just to check in with like past customers or people you've been talking to before this, and see how they're doing. And maybe not that hard sale call of, are you doing something right now, but like the caring, like, cause we should all care for each other. And then but to keep in touch and not just like tunnel away until this is over.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be worse because then it's like after, after it's all over, it's like, oh, hey, do you want to sell now? Like I think it's better to go, are you okay? Do you need anything? Like, do you want me to help you? You know what I mean? Like it's, if you've got a relationship with somebody, show that you care. Don't wait until you think you can get something out of it.
No.
you know?
Well, I have some customers that just moved down here, and I've been like every few days. They're older. They're not like they could still get out and stuff, but it's like recommended not to. And I'm like, do you need me to make a grocery store trip? Like anything that you need, instead of like, hey, do you know anybody looking to buy or sell real estate? Like it's not a conversation like that. It's just how can I help you?
Yeah, show that you care. The human side of real estate. Hey.
It's all about relationships.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking with me today and sharing your business and your area and your thoughts on everything. It's been amazing. And we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.